Today we've got a packed lineup of topics you won't want to miss. Ubisoft just dropped its latest financial report, and it's not great. Revenue is down 31%, net bookings are down nearly 35%, and even digital sales took a hit. But despite the numbers, the company is staying optimistic, mostly because Assassin's Creed Shadows is on the way. Pre-sales for Shadows are apparently tracking well, matching Assassin's Creed Odyssey, which was the second best-selling entry in the franchise. Ubisoft's banking on this game to turn things around, and early previews have been positive, especially when it comes to the dual protagonist system and its story. If it delivers, this could be a major win for them. Meanwhile, Rainbow Six Siege is still holding strong, hitting its highest monthly revenue per paying user since launch. The Crew Motorfest is also doing well with more players and better retention than The Crew 2. But here's where things get tricky. Ubisoft has been aggressively cutting costs. They've already shut down studios and laid off hundreds of employees, and they're planning even more restructuring to go beyond their initial cost-cutting targets. And then there's the whole Tencent situation. Ubisoft announced a strategic review last month, and rumors of a buyout by Tencent have been floating around since October. The company isn't confirming anything, but they're clearly keeping their options open. So, what happens next? Can Assassin's Creed Shadows actually pull Ubisoft out of this slump? And if a buyout is on the table, does Tencent end up calling the shots? The leaks don't stop there. Reports reveal the Animus Hub, a launcher for future AC games, designed to house features like season passes and an in-game store offering cosmetics, environments, and even pets. This centralized hub aims to make Assassin's Creed feel more like a live service platform. While Ubisoft claims rewards in the Animus Hub will be free, their strategy is clear. The more time players spend engaged in their ecosystem, the higher the likelihood they'll splurge on cosmetics or other paid items. Free content isn't generosity, it's bait. The presence of ISU coins, another currency, alongside Helix credits, raises concern. Will Ubisoft juggle two premium currencies to nickel and dime their players? While ISU coins might be earned in-game, we've seen this model before. Free currency requires grinding, while real money shortcuts entice those unwilling to put in the hours. Ubisoft seems to be chasing the monetization strategies of games like Warframe and Apex Legends, but those are free-to-play titles. When applied to 70 single-player games, this approach risks alienating fans. Alright, let's talk about Split Fiction, because this game might be doing something we haven't seen in a long time, not just by bringing back full-blown co-op, or running at a smooth 60 FPS while rendering two screens at once, but by proving that yes, games can actually launch in a finished state. No day-one disaster, no performance issues, no half-baked mechanics. In an era where live service often means we'll fix it later, Hazelite is out here saying, nah, we'll just make a good game from the start. But let's get the obvious question out of the way. Two female protagonists. One writes science fiction, the other writes fantasy. The whole game is built around their personalities clashing and then learning to work together. So is this woke? Is it pushing some kind of agenda? Or is it just hear me out, a good idea for a story? More importantly, does any of that even matter if the game is actually fun? Because from what I've seen, Split Fiction might just be a Game of the Year contender. Alright, so Strauss Zelnick, the CEO of Take-Two, was on CNBC the other day, and of course the whole do video games cause violence question came up again. His response: he's not worried. He even pointed out that this whole idea has been tested and disproven, but somehow, every time a new GTA drops, we're right back to this conversation. GTA 5 was a massive deal when it launched. 3 protagonists, a huge open world, and a game you could basically live in if you wanted to. It broke records, got ported to new consoles, and even added a first-person mode on PS5 and Xbox Series X. Now with GTA 6, looking even more realistic, naturally, people are asking the same old questions about whether it's going to make people violent. Zelnick isn't buying it. He pointed out that nobody asks this about movies or TV shows, even though they can look just as real, if not more so. The argument is always directed at video games, specifically GTA, like it's some kind of outlier when tons of other games have similar violence. And honestly, this whole debate goes way back. Remember Mortal Kombat and Night Trap? Those games freaked people out so much that they literally created the ESRB to rate video games. Now, by today's standards, those games are pretty tame, but at the time there was actual panic over them. Same cycle, different era. GTA's not going anywhere. It's too big, too successful. Politicians will bring this up every few years, but unless someone finds an undeniable direct link between video games and real-world violence, it's just gonna be noise in the background. But why is it always GTA that gets singled out when other games are just as intense? PlayStation just had a state of play, and while it had some cool reveals like Tide of Annihilation and that new Lies of P DLC, it was pretty light on first-party stuff. The biggest tease was Housemarque's next game, Saros, but beyond that, not much from PlayStation's major studios. Which is kinda weird, right? We know they have big games in the pipeline. Ghost of Yotei, Death Stranding, 2 Marvel's Wolverine, and now that new Naughty Dog project Intergalactic, but none of them showed up. So now, everyone's looking ahead to the summer, hoping PlayStation is saving the good stuff for a proper showcase. Industry insider Jeff Grubb mentioned that internally, Sony's apparently debating whether to go all out with a full showcase or just do another state of play. Nothing's locked in yet, but honestly, a big showcase would make sense. Marvel's Wolverine is still a mystery, and Ghost of Yotei is supposedly launching this year, but we barely know anything about it. So, what's the plan? Is Sony holding back for a major event, or are they just being extra cautious about when they show these games? Sony just dropped its latest earnings report, and yeah, they're doing pretty well. Sales were up 18% year over year, hitting nearly 29 billion, way above what analysts expected. PlayStation was a big part of that, with Game and Network Services pulling in more cash thanks to stronger software network services, and of course, PS5 hardware sales. They sold 9.5 million PS5s this quarter, up from 8.2 million last year. Music and pictures also saw solid growth. Streaming services helped push music revenue up, while Crunchyroll and theatrical releases gave Sony's film division a boost. The only weak spots: TV sales were down, and the Imaging and Sensing Solutions division, which makes image sensors for phones, didn't really grow. Despite all that, Sony's still sitting on a massive pile of cash, about 2.49 trillion yen, so they've got plenty of room to make some big moves. And with the stock up nearly 7% after the report, investors are paying attention. But what's next? How does Sony's success with PS5 affect Microsoft and Nintendo? Could their streaming dominance put pressure on competitors like Spotify or Netflix? And with all that cash on hand, what's their next big acquisition going to be? The PS Portal just took a big step toward being more than just a PS5 accessory. Thanks to cloud streaming still in beta, by the way, it can now play over 200 games without needing to be tethered to a console. That means for PS Plus premium members in supported regions, the Portal is starting to feel a little more like a real PlayStation handheld. Sony being Sony isn't exactly great at keeping people updated on what's available, so PS Portal owners have taken it upon themselves to track the growing list of compatible games. Right now, the community compiled count is sitting at 212 titles and growing. Of course, cloud streaming isn't available everywhere. Some regions like Australia are stuck with PS Plus Deluxe instead of Premium, since Sony doesn't think the internet infrastructure there is reliable enough. But if you're in a supported area, there's even a fan-made site, psportal.games, where you can check which games are playable and get notified when new ones are added. It's all pointing to one big question: is this Sony quietly testing the waters for a true standalone PlayStation handheld in the future? Let's talk about why consoles, especially something like the PS5 Pro, always seem to stand out in the gaming world. Have you ever compared the cost of a high-end gaming PC to the price of a console? It's like night and day. Consoles generally offer the best bang for your buck, giving you solid performance without forcing you to take out a second mortgage. You plug them into your TV and boom, you're gaming at a fraction of the price of a big fancy rig. Think about NVIDIA RTX cards. Yeah, they're powerful, but they come with price tags that can make your wallet weep. Sure, you'll get gorgeous graphics on a PC if you crank up the settings, but at what cost? That's why consoles feel so accessible. You get to enjoy games at a competitive level of visuals without emptying your bank account. It's a huge relief for anyone who just wants to pick up a controller and play, even though analysts keep saying PC gaming is on the rise. Have you noticed how many people are flocking back to consoles? So, when Sony dropped the PlayStation 5 Pro a few months ago, a lot of people were like, who's actually going to pay $700 for what's basically a souped-up PS5? Turns out, quite a few people. The initial sales reports show that there's still a good chunk of the gaming community willing to drop serious cash for cutting-edge console graphics. According to Matt Piscatella, an analyst at Circana, the PS5 Pro made up 19% of all PS5 sales in the US during its launch month, November. For context, that's pretty much in line with the PS4 Pro, which accounted for about 20% of total PS4 sales during its run. It's not just the US either. Over in the UK, the PS5 Pro made up 26% of console sales in November. And in Japan, Famitsu reported that the PS5 Pro snagged a whopping 63% of November's PS5 sales, moving 78,000 units in its first week alone. But here's the kicker. Even though unit sales for the PS5 Pro in the US were down about 12% compared to the PS4 PS4 Pro's launch back in 2016, the PS5 Pro still made 50% more revenue. Why? Because of that $700 price tag. Back in the day, the PS4 Pro launched at a more wallet-friendly $400, which would be about $533 today. This shows that while the high price might make some people hesitate, it hasn't stopped the hardcore crowd, the folks who need the newest and most powerful hardware, from jumping on it. Sony president Hiroki Totoki even said that the pricing hasn't negatively affected sales so far. He straight up called the PS5 Pro hardcore user hardware, and that's exactly who seems to be buying it right now. It looks like Sony's mid-gen upgrade strategy is working, at least for now. A two-tiered approach makes sense in 2024, where there's clearly a market for people who want premium performance, even if upgrade. Gamers are excited, and that excitement is pulling them away from expensive PC setups they may not even fully utilize. We also have our everyday devices covered already. Smartphones for on-the-go browsing, laptops for school or work. When we finally get time to play, we crave something that's built for gaming, not another device bogged down with updates, antivirus software, and random processes. That's one huge reason consoles are so appealing. You get home, pop in the disc, or load up the digital store, and just go. No drivers, no patchy software issues, no stress. Speaking of simplicity, isn't it nice to have a plug-and-play system? You hook up your console, grab your controller, and you're all set. There's something refreshingly straightforward about that. On a PC, even a little glitch can lead you down a rabbit hole of forums trying to fix an error code. Meanwhile, your friends on console are already in the lobby, sending invites ready to roll. And can we talk about DualSense? That controller alone is reason enough to pick a console. It's not just about fancy features, it's about feeling the game in your hands. Triggers that adapt to in-game tension. Subtle vibrations that match the environment. It's an immersive experience that you don't always get with PC peripherals. It's like having a direct line from your hands to the game world. You might have noticed how some of the biggest games in history come out on consoles first. Sure, there are PC exclusives, but remember the GTA series. Those titles usually debut on console, and it often takes a while before PC gamers get a chance to officially experience them. That wait can be frustrating when everyone else is already raving about the newest missions and multiplayer modes. Now, I won't deny that PC is king when it comes to modding and competitive FPS. There's something magical about installing a fresh mod that breathes new life into an old classic, or fine-tuning your mouse sensitivity for maximum headshots. But for many of us, the thrill of just relaxing on the couch with a controller in hand outweighs digging into files and settings. Interestingly, even PC gamers seem to love console-style gaming. Have you noticed how many people buy Xbox controllers for their PCs, or pick up handhelds like the Steam Deck, or eagerly wait for Steam to drop a dedicated Steam OS console? They're basically trying to get that console experience. Remember, PCs need to handle Windows, background processes, and all sorts of overhead. Meanwhile, a console channels its power directly into gaming. That's why, at around $700, you can't really build a PC that can go toe-to-toe with the PS5 Pro. It's specialized hardware at a killer price, and that's what keeps consoles on top. And let's not forget what's looming on the horizon: the PlayStation 6. Chances are it's going to dominate the gaming world once again. It's not necessarily because it'll introduce some mind-blowing, never-before-seen technology, though that would be awesome, but rather because the next round of PC hardware, especially those upcoming 50 series GPUs, just don't offer enough bang for your buck. Have you seen the rumored performance increases? We're talking maybe a 10 to 20% jump in raw power, yet the price is likely going to make your eyes water. Think about it. If a slight performance bump costs you hundreds, if not thousands more to keep your rig cutting edge, is that really worth it? Especially when you can grab the latest Sony console and enjoy games fully optimized for that machine without an extra headache. The reality is that if you want a PC with genuinely better performance than a modern console, you'll easily be looking at a $2,000 price tag or more. Sure, some people can swing that, but for most, that's simply not the best deal in town. Every time I do a deep dive into price-to-performance charts, consoles, especially from Sony, always come out looking strong. If you want to be ahead of all the gaming leaks and news, specifically PlayStation news, time for you to subscribe. And as always, a like on the video is very much appreciated.